Hey everyone, in today's video we've got one of my favorites, the Marantz 2325. This one showed up locally and it's another one of the same stories as the SX737. It's been sitting for a long time and the owner just wants it to be gone through, make sure it's working okay, see if there's anything bad inside, and that's about it. This thing is in excellent cosmetic condition, so I don't anticipate there being too much wrong, but you know, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I've not powered this on. I do not know what's going to happen when I power it on. It might work perfectly fine. I'm not sure. But we're going to dive into this thing, see what's going on, and at the end it's going to be a nice, good functioning receiver. We got to take a look at this thing first though. This thing is awesome. So like I said, this is one of my favorites. When I was a little kid in middle school reading about all the different models of Marantz receiver, this one really caught my attention because look at all of those buttons and knobs. There are so many buttons and knobs on this Marantz 2325 receiver. And really the reason for that is this stuff over here. The Dolby system. This is completely obsolete. I'm not sure how great it was when it was new even, but I mean, just look at all the space this thing takes up. These are actually potentiometers right here. These are not buttons. Then you've got an entire knob dedicated to this thing. So when you look at the Marantz 2330, which is kind of the successor to this, there are far less buttons, and the reason for that is they dumped the Dolby system. But other than that, if you go over here, you've got all your typical receiver functions. This is pretty typical stuff you find on most Marantz receivers, with the exception of these two. Bass, mid, treble. Tone mode is kind of interesting. Mode in general. There's no mono button on this receiver. You gotta switch to mono, or you can reverse your stereo channels, or just have only your right or only your left. So that's kind of a cool switch if you want to use that. Then selector, just like any other Marantz. And then this thing. These all feel really good. All these controls turn really nice. Nothing is in questionable condition here, really. The only thing that's in questionable condition is this remote speaker button. This is the only complaint I got from the owner, which is it's pushing back when I try to push the switch in. So we're gonna take a look in there and see why is that happening. Is it just deoxit it needs, or is the little metal arm thingy stuck? Who knows. The gyro touch tuning feels great too. Then one last thing to note about this is actually bigger than your typical Marantz receiver. In order to fit all the stuff in here, they had to increase the size of the chassis. And one way you can tell it's on the bigger chassis is we've got a few more screws to hold the cover on. We've got two there and two here. So I'll need to get those off when I take the cover off. So let's get this cover off, plug it into the dim bulb, and see what happens. Yeah, as you can see, this takes up like most of my bench, and there's not much room for me to work on stuff. But here we are, folks. Here we are inside the great Marantz 2325. It appears I'm the first one to be here. I don't see anything anyone's done. You don't find them this clean too often, folks. It's always nice to have something show up that's this clean. I see no reason we can't just put this on the dim bulb and see what happens. Let's get the dim bulb in view here so y'all can see it. Here we go. Yeah. Do we get a click? We do. We've got a click, so that's great. And you can see with this receiver, the dim bulb runs a little bit dim actually. Most receivers we have on this channel, the dim bulb is basically not even lit. That's because this thing is 125 watts per channel, or that's what it's rated at. So the idling current on this thing is going to be much higher than like the SX737 we had on here earlier. Let's check the main speakers for DC offset. Let's get the multimeter in view. Let's see if I can do it in a way where it's not reflecting off of the ceiling light. I know I've done that. I see that in editing sometimes, and I'm like, gosh darn it, I keep letting you guys down. Okay, so right channel has, well, that's a bit Okay. Boy oh boy, folks. That's quite a bit of DC offset. That's almost a volt. That's supposed to be 0. We're not hooking a speaker up to that thing. Let's go to the left channel. Not as bad, but still not great. Alright, well, you know what that means, folks. It's time to go to hifiengine.com and download the service manual and see which one of these pots on this amp board controls the DC offset, get it in spec, and then check the bias. Alright, we've got it right here on the laptop, and it says for DC offset you are working with R713. The board says R713 right there. We need the big flathead. So let's get the big little flathead. Now that's weird, folks. You can see I get like real close to 0, and then it just wants to jump straight back up to 0.6. See? Look at that, I'm barely turning it to make that happen. Maybe it's dirty. Let's give it a little squirt of the fader lube and see if that does anything. How are we behaving now? Yes, that's much better behavior. So the pot was a little dirty. Yeah, I don't get that big jump anymore, so that's nice. Hey, check that out. 0. What's going on the other side? Still have 0 over there too, so that's pretty dang good. So we've reined in the DC offset. The heat sinks are nice and cool, so that tells me that the bias is probably okay. Yeah, I think I'll just worry about that later. Let's get some audio going through this thing. So let's see if we've got sound coming out of the left. We don't. Why is that? So we got nothing out of the left. What about the right? Okay, right channel is loud and clear. So folks, it appears that we have no sound out of the left channel, and we do have sound out of the right channel. I don't know how that sound sounds, but I'm a curious person. Let's take a minute and figure that out. We're going to take these little thingies off of the multimeter. We'll hook it up to the speaker. Let's see what we get out of the radio. Okay.
Just reading a book. I could have delayed it.
And that's no antenna, so radio's working really nicely. So, since we've got no sound out of the left channel, that means that what we need to do is follow the signal. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first use my phone, which I know has a good left and right signal, make sure that's actually getting to the receiver. Then we're going to follow it through the switch and see if it's getting through the preamplifier. And if it's not getting through the preamplifier, there's a chip on these that is known to be kind of troublesome, the BA312. But if it is getting through, then we got to go over to this guy right here and see why the power amplifier is not amplifying the signal. So first things first, let's get the phone plugged in. Okay, so here we are in aux. Let's get everyone's favorite song playing. No sound still. Is it working in the right channel? Yes. It's working in the right. It's not working in the left. One other thing I noticed back here is these receivers have automatic jumpers for the main in and pre-out. Like this 2230 right here, you need this cable to get the main in and pre-out to work, but I have seen it where those internal jumpers fail. So real quick, let's just jump this thing, make sure that this thing's working right. Let's see if that might be our cause. That's hilarious, folks. I was right. Bad jumper. So, that's the right. That's the left. So it should work with that out. But it doesn't. Well, that was easy. Bad jumper. So, I don't know what the fix for that is. It might just be cleaning. I have not looked back there ever to see like mechanically how that works. But yeah. Yeah, that's static. There's a little bit of static in the treble control. So this thing needs its controls cleaned, it needs that jumper fixed, it needs the bias checked, probably needs these trimmer pots cleaned, and that's about it. That's all it needs per se. I'll probably replace the differential pairs on the power amplifier boards because that's a good preventative thing. And then while that's out, well, you might as well replace certain capacitors and stuff. There's two electrolytic guys right here that might be good candidates for replacement. Yeah, cleaning the controls on this will be a good thing to see because there's so many of them. And it's kind of cool how the preamplifier board comes out on this thing. You'll like seeing that. The 2250, 2250B, 2275 and 2325, this one have like a modular board type thing that comes out with a plug. Well folks, I can't find my 8mm sockets, so unfortunately I need to use a wrench. Not the end of the world, but as I've mentioned in videos before, these are 8mm and you want to make sure you're not like rubbing against the faceplate as you loosen these and tighten them, because you will leave a like a witness mark on the faceplate. This has already happened to this receiver by the person who had this apart last, and that's unfortunate, but you know, it's not the end of the world. As you saw, I just very lightly loosened them so I could get these guys off. So now, once these are out, it's going to be removing all of the knobs, including the balance knob, but what's unique about 2325 is you got to remove these four knobs for the Dolby. So let's just start right here with the balance knobs, since that's always pretty easy. And then I'll move on to right here, and I'm going to put them back here in order so they all go on the same way when I'm done. These are tougher just because you can't really get your fingers on them very easily. There's so much other stuff in the way, and the shaft is the same size as this, so you need to apply the same amount of force in theory. And you're in an even more vulnerable place. You can already see, maybe the person who had this apart last did this, but the plastic has been kind of punched in right here. It's no longer glued to the faceplate. It is over here and over here too, but not right here where these guys gotta come out. So I will just carefully work on this, and hopefully I don't make it too much worse. Okay, and the last thing you gotta do is undo this nut right here. This is generally you can get your fingernails in here and just kind of turn it. There's two slits in it. Now this should slide right off. Oh. Now these models, you've got a screw right up here, so can't forget that. There it is, folks. Now that the faceplate is off, I can work on removing this dial face right here, which looks like it's already been removed once, or the glue is completely given out. So let's find out which of those it is. Gonna lift this guy up ever so carefully. Get this little trim piece, put it off to the side as well. I don't know if I showed it earlier, but like the vellum paper right here, whenever this was in phono mode, I could see like some distortion in that indicator. And that's because this paper was ripped. So, let's see if I can get it out in one piece here. Looks like somebody may have been in here to change fuse lamps once. So yeah, these fuse lamps look not original. Plastic housing on this receiver is not terrible. Salvageable. We can still use this. I'm looking right here, and I'm finding the classic thing you find with these receivers. This plastic housing might be in better shape today, but it's not, because somebody along the lines put 250 milliamp lamps in this receiver. That's wrong. It's supposed to be a 200 milliamp bulb, and what happens when you go up to 250 is the plastic melts and it's not right. So shame on whoever relamped this before. It says very clearly in the service manual that it's supposed to be 200 milliamp, but again, yeah, these are all 250. Good thing we are replacing these with lamps from dgwojo.com, because he buys high quality stuff, and you can get the proper milliamperage from him. He'll hook you up with the proper thing. So, glad to have those guys out of there. I'll bet you the same junk is living in here as well. And yes, once again, we've got these weird 250 milliamp bulbs. I'll put these screws back in so I don't lose them. They're very tiny. Maybe some of you noticed this, but I figured out why the remote speakers button wasn't working. This thing right here is lodged behind the button cover. And what this is it's just a little black ring that they glued to the back of the faceplate. So like right here, this is where it came from. It used to be right here. So all I have to do is just glue this back in place properly, and then the remote speakers button works just fine. Alright, I had to take a quick break from that. I don't really remember where I left off. I'll probably have to start editing the old stuff before I continue recording this, but we have parts come in. We've got a relamp kit from dgwojo.com, everything labeled nice for us, and notably we've got another BA312-M kit from Sparkos Labs. So these will both make their way into this receiver in this video. Right off the bat, I'm going to take these proper 200 milliamp fuse lamps. I'm just going to pop them right into this thing, because it's always nice to have these in the receiver no matter what, especially when you're working on it, because these things light up when you've got the thing turned on. And it's always nice to know when you've got your receiver turned on, or at least have an obvious indicator of that. So that was easy. I'm going to go edit real quick because I don't even remember what I talked about already. There's been this really nasty cold going around here, and my wife got it first, and you've probably heard her coughing in some of the videos. And now I have it, so I've been kind of down for the count trying to deal with that. Next, I want to get these bi pins replaced, these indicator bulbs that show up right here, but in order to do that and solder, we need to get this tuner string out of the way. So what I like to do for that is I like to take a piece of Scotch tape and just place it right here. And this one's really convenient because the string exits at the top. And on other receivers it'll exit at the bottom, and it's a little less convenient. So we can do that, and then what that allows us to do is just kind of carefully take the string off the pulley, and so we have that right there. Now we can just kind of move that back there out of the way. Next, what we got to do is unscrew this circuit board from the receiver so we can pull it out, and this is where a magnetic tip screwdriver really comes in handy. So now that I've got this right here, what I can do is just remove each one of these with either the Heiko or the soldering iron, and get them out that way. Alright, so I just go in each one. And it comes right out. And these are all the same type. They're all 40 milliamp bulbs. When you're done, double check your work, because you might have missed one, or you might have gotten one that's got just way too much solder on it and it doesn't look that good, like this one right here. I don't like how I did it, so I'm going to clean it up and redo it. Okay, that looks good to me, so I'm going to leave it that way. And the last lamp we have to replace is the dial pointer. The worst part about this is making sure you get this apart without breaking your needle. If I break this, I'm done for, folks. Okay, I got it. So that makes me happy. So there it is. There's our tuner pointer bulb. I will cut these for now, but then when I go back to resolder them, I will know that this is where they went. Pull this out. Let's see if our new bulb has enough length in the leads to make this happen. And it does, folks. Look at that. Just absolutely barely has enough lead length in there. We're short by like an inch, but that's going to be okay. And we'll take this, we'll slide it under like it was. See if we can fish it out on the other side. So we've got that board back in. Now we can put this in position. And there, we've got our friend back on track. So the last thing we got to do is set the distance on our new light right here. The snaps mean we're good. And then we'll go all the way this way. We'll check our distance, make sure that that's okay. So that looks good to me. I think I will retighten the metal thing. We'll go this way. And we see that's plenty. And we also see that the wire down here is not interfering with any of the operations of this tuner stuff here. That is a relamping of the 2325. So, why are we under here? Well, we gotta get this board out. This is the preamplifier board, and we're gonna remove this so we can change out the BA312 integrated circuits and add the Sparkos Labs BA312-M kit to the preamplifier. Also, it's gonna allow us to clean these controls really easily since the board just comes right out. So, I'll get that out right now. Here it is, folks, the preamplifier board on a Marantz 2325. What we're going to be going for is these guys right here, the BA312s, and those are going to receive the little discrete op-amp chips from Sparkos Labs. They'll go right there, and then as a part of that repair, you replace some capacitors, you remove a few other things, and then you add a resistor. If you want to see this in more detail, I've got a video about how I go about doing this on my Marantz 2250B. I'll link that video up there so you can take a look at that. But I'm just going to get this done off camera, and we'll come back when it's finished. Alright, so I just finished up the phono preamplifier board. It's a little shiny looking because I just used deoxit products on it. Got those pots nice and cleaned, and this switch. There's our BA312 upgrade. These Nichicon capacitors that came with it. And then I replaced some of the other capacitors on here just because, you know, while you're in there, might as well get them replaced. But you might notice I missed these two, and that is intentional. These are a special capacitor. They are a bipolar electrolytic capacitor. And when I went to my parts bin to go find a replacement, I found one. I only have one.
And unfortunately I'm on a bit of a timeline here. I gotta get this done pretty quick. So what I did is I tested them with this thing, and they both tested better than the one that I had on hand. So I felt comfortable putting those back in, but this one I'm glad I removed because you see it's a 220. I'll hook this up real quick and I'll show you what happens. See, we've got 162 microfarads when it's supposed to be a 220, so that's not ideal, not good. And it gave me an opportunity to clean up this nasty glue stuff that was on this board too. So this is looking real clean now. It's ready to go back in, but we can't do that yet. We still need to clean the rest of these controls inside of this receiver. So I'll get to these switches with some deoxit, and I can access most of these guys under here too from this, but we're also going to need to remove this plate right here. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me access to all of these push buttons right here, and I'll be able to get those real nice with the deoxit. So I will get started on that, I suppose, right now. Next thing I want to do is redo the phono preamplifier, because we've got two SC1344 transistors in here and no one likes those, so they should come out. This little varistor thing should come out too, and we can replace these capacitors while we're at it as well. So I will do that and I'll come back when I'm done. You always gotta stop and test every once in a while when you're working on this stuff, because, well, if I had made a mistake in here and then I moved on to the power amplifier boards, I wouldn't really know exactly where to start. So I know that the BA312 upgrade kit is working well here, and I know that the phono preamplifier is working well also. I tested it with my phone. I'll test it with a record player later, but I know nothing's terribly wrong with it. One way you can test your phono preamplifier with a phone is you just turn it to like a lower volume, and if the music sounds clear but kind of muffled, lacking a lot of treble and has a lot of mid-range and low, it's probably working okay. But if you want to be absolutely sure, you're best off getting an actual record player hooked up to this and testing it that way. So, what happened to the phono preamplifier? We replaced all the transistors. We replaced this little guy right here, the varistor. You put two 1 and 4 1/4/8 in series and replace it that way. You can see my little heat shrink jobber right there. We replaced the capacitors, and that's about it. So now I'm ready to move on to the power amplifier boards. I want to get those apart because the DC offset on this thing was nuts when we got it. So I think differential pair replacement might be in order, and there's a few other transistors on here that are known to go bad. And while we're at it, we'll replace some of the capacitors too. And lucky for me, getting these things out is super easy, because this is one of the first receivers where Marantz learned about connectors. That's a connector, that's a connector. You just take those two off, you take the 4 mounting screws out, and it just comes right out. If you're doing this on a 2270, it is a complete pain in the butt because everything is soldered onto there, but with the addition of these connectors, makes life really good as a technician working on one of these 2325s in the power amp section. So here we've got the right and left power amplifier modules out of the 2325. And what needs to happen here is we got to replace the differential pair, which is this thing here, these two capacitors, and this tantalum capacitor right here. So for this tantalum guy, we're going to be using a Nichicon KA 33 microfarad replacement. For these two, we'll be using a PW 10 microfarad of a little bit higher voltage. Then for the differential pair, what this is it is two thermally connected TO92 transistors. So that's these guys right here. These are matched KSA 992s that I matched with my, I've got a video showing you how I do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little tiny dab of thermal compound. I'm going to put it between the two. I'll sandwich them together like this. Then I'll take a piece of heat shrink tubing, go over it like that, and then we'll go over the heat gun over here. And that's how you make your differential pair on a Marantz receiver, if it's set up this way. Then after that, I'll clean these guys because those really need to be cleaned. We were seeing a lot of weird stuff happening earlier. These come apart real easily. And there's everything. We've got full access to everything right there. So I'm going to get that taken care of. I'll report back when I'm done. Well, that's copyright. This thing's working now. Got the power amplifier boards rebuilt. Got the bias checked. DC offset checked. And when I got this receiver initially, when I put my hands on the heat sinks, this one was always feeling hotter, which means the bias on this one was set higher somehow than this one. So right now they feel exactly the same temperature to me, so I'm pretty happy about that. I learned one little thing in the forums, Audio Karma. Learned a little tip by the user DC Megs. It's a tip for setting the bias. So in the service manual, it tells you to go underneath this thing and go off of pins J80 or 702 and 708. What you can do is go off of R748 right here. You clamp one lead on this lower one here. And you do a better job than that. Then you take your other one and you clamp it right here. And that gives you the bias. And if you want to check our DC offset, we just attach it right there. And we see we've got 20-ish. So you can turn the DC offset pot right here and kind of rein that in a little bit closer to 0 if it'll behave. Yeah, that's okay behavior right there. We're gonna call that good. Alright everyone, you gotta see this. I got the 1000 hertz going, and we'll just bring this up and we'll see where we start to see clipping. It's right about there. See some of that if it goes away. It goes away around 35 volts. If you plug that into an Ohm's law calculator, that's 153 watts into 8 ohms. Not bad. So that's for the left channel, and that resistor is noticeably warm, so let's go over to the right channel and see what it's up to. Okay, I've got that switched over. Let's go to the right side. We've got, there's the clipping. Again, 35 volts, over 150 watts per channel. When it's supposed to be 125, that's not too bad. On which we once flew, farther from the tree where nothing much more beautiful than this, folks. This might be the most aesthetically pleasing Marantz receiver there is. The 2325. It's just so nice. And with this one being cleaned up, having all new lamps, all that good stuff, it's just, it's a force to be reckoned with. I mean, I wish I had a better camera and better lighting. I love this thing. This thing rocks. It sounds great after everything I did. I was just testing out the phono section with some Wolfpack. Everything sounds pretty good. There's not really room for my elbow. This thing is so big. But, you know, this was just a, get it running. It's been sitting for a while. Let's make sure it's okay kind of thing. This was not a restoration. So I looked into what transistors are known to be pretty failure prone on this and found some of those in the phono preamp. So I totally redid the phono preamp while I was in there. We got the preamplifier upgraded with the Sparkos Labs BA312-M kit, and it sounds awesome. I forgot to take a before reading of this receiver for like THD with Rightmark Audio, so I don't really have anything to compare it to if I were to take a reading right now, so I just don't feel like doing that, unfortunately. I'll remember to do that in the future. I look at the power amplifiers, and I know that when we first turned this thing on, we got some pretty gnarly DC offset, almost a volt. I think it was like 600 or 700 millivolts, and it's quite a bit. That's a lot more than you want to see in this. So I took the power amplifier modules out,
I cleaned those trimmer pots with fader because they're pretty heavy duty on this thing. They're designed to see a little bit more current, so those are able to be cleaned. They don't need to be replaced. And then replacement of the differential pairs and the amplifiers adds an extra bit of reliability to this. And I think that's related to the DC offset. And then I checked the power supply board. I checked the relay. Everything's working great right there. I read all the capacitors in circuit. I know it's not proper, but the majority of them gave me a value that was in line with what it was supposed to be. And you can check ESR in circuit. That's one thing the ESR 70 can do. And everything checked out okay. Filter capacitors checked out just okay also. And as you saw with the power test, 155 watts per channel. Can't complain about that. This thing's working fantastic. The controls all got cleaned, new vellum paper, brand new lamps, all around. This thing's good to go. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.